Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. Today, we have a really exciting panel on getting a new generation of women into VC. I'm so excited to introduce this panel with Kajol, who will be moderating, Rosaline and Leesa. I think it's going to be a super exciting discussion. Over to you, Kajol. If you can tell everyone a little bit more about your experience, that would be fantastic.
Yeah, sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Kajol. I am working in tech for the last 5 years, where I help to create and launch new products and services for my clients. And I absolutely love it. And I'm really excited for this discussion. We have Rosaline and Leesa here today. And I don't think I can do it this justice, giving an introduction about them, both of them. So, Rosaline, over to you first. I'm going to give a quick introduction about yourself.
So I am in a startup. I'm the founder. It's my 8th year, so we're not a new startup. But I started this because I was running one of the largest brokers in Asia. And one of my clients was a Chinese client. And they said, we bought insurance, but we discovered too many late-stage cancers. And it's really too late. Why couldn't someone connect the health screening for early detection and all the disease prevention and still have treatment? So can't we also do early detection and prevention with treatment? So that's why I started my startup 8 years ago.
Amazing. Do you want to tell everyone the name of your startup, actually?
It's called CXA.
Yeah, it's amazing. And I've read more into it. It's absolutely brilliant. So no, major congrats with that. And Leesa, do you want to give a quick introduction about yourself as well?
Sure. Good afternoon, everybody. Good morning or good evening. I'm Leesa Soulodre. I'm the general partner of R3I Ventures. We run this venture capital ecosystem across Singapore, Luxembourg, and Silicon Valley, and our people are spread across the planet. And actually, I started my company to help founders like Rosaline. I'm the entrepreneur in residence to the Australian government, and I was watching too many founders basically get butchered on the way through. And I'm a founder. I've been a tech entrepreneur for 25 years, have my own IPOs and exits, and I just thought we could show the world that it can be done better. I'm also a responsible investor. And so I spend my life investing in medtech companies and deep tech companies, pretty much trying to change the planet. That's a little about me.
No, amazing. Obviously it sounds like you both have done incredible things. So really excited to dig into that a little bit today. So Rosaline, I'm going to start off with you. Do you want to tell everyone a little bit more about your journey into insurtech and then how you jumped? And I know you've quickly mentioned about how you've, what caused you to switch over, but I would love to hear a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so I try to convince my firm to give me $10 million to do this because I've built 2 other startups before during the dot-com. And for 5 years, I begged and begged and begged. And every variation of the business case, they said no. And it was surprising because we were the fastest growing part of the whole firm. I was already on the operating committee. So we grew 800%, a company that hadn't grown in 30 years. But they never said yes. So finally, when the CEO and my boss was fired, I decided this is time to go because once your sponsors are gone. But I didn't realize that it would be my own $10 million. And that's what actually ended up happening. So I borrow 5. The other 5 is from me and my husband and my kids. And that's how we started. So strengthen my convictions, sadly.
No, a brilliant £5 million investment that you've made.
Yes.
Now, obviously.
Yes, this is an obsession, obviously.
Yeah. And in terms of, how you felt when you put that 5 million in, right? What were you feeling? I'm sure, when you're creating your own startup, putting that much money on the line is quite difficult. So, how were you feeling and what convinced you to, just take the risk, which I think a lot of women sometimes don't do?
Yeah. So I was pretty confident only because I had grown the firm so much and we were 50% bigger than the number 2, right? Yeah. So the only question I had was whether big companies would go to a no-name brand. Can I make it 10 times better than the globals? So they come to me. So that was the only uncertainty I had. My husband, on the other hand, had lots of uncertainty because it was his money too. But I did tell him, look, I'm going to buy brokers. We needed to at that point in time. And I can always sell them. And we have, we've given back money. So there was really no downside unless I really wrecked it. Right? But I didn't think I would.
Yeah, no,
and plus
amazing.
I was working for 33 years by then. So,
yeah, you definitely do know how to, run a company based on all of the experience that you've had so far, which has been incredible. And Leesa, more into, your journey into deep tech. Would you love to hear a little bit more about how you, got into deep tech first, but also what influenced you to move into venture capital?
Yeah, so I started my career wanting to be a doctor in the third world. When I graduated from high school, medicine had gone post-grad because we had too many young doctors killing patients. And so I thought if I was a great nurse, then I would make a great doctor. So I became a nurse. I was an Alzheimer and dementia and palliative care nurse in Australia. And I joined the army because if you have military experience, you're more likely to be employed by Medicine Sans Frontières. And that was my big mission back then. Unfortunately, I am not a great truck driver. I didn't even have my license before I joined the military. And I was delivering rations in the forest and rolled my truck down the side of a mountain. And I didn't walk for a year. And when I got out of the military, I studied podiatry, but feet are not really my thing. And I met some very, very famous entrepreneurs, Jody Rich and Bradley Keeling. And we built a company called OneTel during telecom deregulation, where we took a company pretty much from 0 to 10,000 people and 100 million a month in revenue and IPO'd it on the Australian Stock Exchange. So I've been really blessed my entire career. I built everything from geospatial satellite systems to E-Trade in the early days, St. George's online banking system 20 years ago. I think I've worked across every area of deep tech. And on my way to a London School of Economics module for my executive MBA in 2013, I met a woman on a plane. Always speak to the person next to you. You never know who you're going to meet. And she was the founder of the Advanced Digital Science Center of Singapore. And we were both sitting there working on problems on our laptop. And it turns out we actually had a lot in common. And during one flight, I had commercialized everything in her lab, and she has a photographic memory. And she said, when you get back to Singapore, you're going to volunteer in my lab and we're going to do this. And we ended up commercializing 4 companies out of her lab. Wow. 2 we exited, 1 to Taobao, 1 to Panasonic, 1 to Great Wall, and 1 died on the back of GDPR like they do. And it was during that time where I was teaching. I've always taught part-time at the university. And I had these students in my MBA class and they kept saying, Prof, help me. You got to help me, man. Because, they were heading to the valley of death in their medtech startup. And I was like, dude, I can't help you. Like, I'm your professor. When you graduate, knock on my door and I'll help you. But here's, 10 people to go and meet. And I just realized that there was this big missing middle between when the grants run out and when you're truly eligible for venture capital. And unfortunately, great medtechs that have had, tens of millions of philanthropy money and foundation money poured into them in the university were walking straight out the door into the arms of the accelerator vultures, who basically take 10% of your company for $1 million valuation. And clearly those companies are not $1 million valuation companies, right? They're, 20, 30, 40 by then. And I just thought that A, we could keep these guys safe, and B, we could do it more sensibly. So I've launched a House of MedTech and House of Deep Tech in Singapore and Luxembourg. And we're going to launch another one in the US next year. And we're literally lining them up like founders on an airport runway. And we're taking them out of Asia into Europe. We're soft landing them in Luxembourg, commercializing them, truly transforming them and their business models into viable, scalable companies. And we're pumping them full of government grant money. And then we look to help them exit into the US market. So it's really exciting. We've landed 40 companies in the last 72 hours in the Singapore FinTech Festival. Tuesday, we launched 20 more here in Luxembourg. And it's a really exciting journey. And I think the most valuable thing here is that, these are people with families who, like Rosaline have taken
Mm-hmm.
huge gambles with their career and their family's fortune and, you know, their family's future. And every one of them has a passion and ambition. Rosaline's is to transform healthcare into value-based care. What's not great about that, right? If you can improve patient outcomes, save lives, reduce the number of days hospitalization, put transparency into the system, get rid of the middlemen, we should all be enabling her to do that, right? This is so important. So yeah, I love what I do and I wouldn't change it for the world.
Yeah,
we,
major
we all
congratulations.
love what Leesa does. She's the biggest supporter, I have to say.
Oh no, amazing. Major congratulations, by the way, Leesa, in terms of launching those 40 companies as well, which is crazy. And Rosaline, a little bit more then, we'd love to hear in terms of like what triggered you to come up with CXA? Like what made you land on the idea and how did you think about that it was actually a viable idea to go ahead with?
So I did the human version of the idea and I experimented with plenty of our clients. So when I was running Mercer and Marsh, it was an insurance broker. But with insurance, you wait until they get sick, you know, so it's like waiting till someone gets cancer, you know, but it's too late. So we asked all these clients, you know, what is really important to you? And for a lot of them, it really was preventing it getting to that stage. So when I talked to a lot of these corporate clients, and they were primarily the Fortune 500, they all said the fastest way to attack the rising costs of healthcare is to prevent these diseases from happening. And if you could actually figure out, you know, from the health screening or from people's lifestyle habits, who's prone to get these diseases and nudge them, right, to change their lifestyle or get them on medication early so that it's not too late. Everyone's for that idea. The question is, how do you identify them? And then how do you get them to change? And so we built reward programs. We work with chronic disease programs so that, and we work with health coaches to actually nudge people there, and we rewarded them because companies are willing to reward their employees with more money or more days off, right? To get them to be healthier, because it's not the highly motivated you're worried about, because you know the healthy are already healthy. It's the sedentary and obese that you're trying to nudge. So the workplace we found is a great place to do that because they're already spending money on treatment. So why don't we allow people to shift the money? So that's what we actually do. We shift the money and we connect all the providers into one platform, one ecosystem.
No, you're doing an incredible job. And in terms of leaving your leadership position at Mercer, which it must have been, you know, quite a difficult decision to make, right? And I think a lot of people always talk about, you know, starting their own startup, wanting to, you know, go into the whole journey. And often we hear about quite young individuals who want to become founders. But were there any additional challenges that you faced or felt being a slightly older founder, you know, leaving such a, you know, I would say a great career path that you had, you know, ahead of you?
It's probably easier to leave later in life than it is early in life. And I think the impetus really was, if your boss and the ultimate CEO is gone, right? If all your supporters are gone, and for me to grow 800%, I pissed off a lot of people, right? So it's almost like a dog pile if you decide to stay, you know, once your supporters are gone. So that was the right timing for me.
Yeah. But in terms of, you know, for example, like, you know, raising money and so forth, did you feel like there was any like difficult challenges being a slightly older founder, or did you feel that, you know, it didn't really make much of a difference?
I think it makes, I didn't know anything about fundraising. Leesa's actually one of the first people I talked to about fundraising, because I knew nothing about fundraising. And unfortunately, at that point in time in Singapore, the regulators wouldn't allow us to apply to get new brokerages. We had to go buy one.
Wow.
And
Okay.
also get approved by the regulator. And the regulator told me when I decided which one to buy that I had to be the sole shareholder. So I actually had a backer, someone who we found just through talking to everybody who was going to back me, a private equity firm. But I was told I had to be the only backer at that point in time because they didn't want a PE firm to go break up an SME, right, and sell it for his assets. So that's why I had to come up with the whole 5 million. I only had 2. I found out once I found my husband's keys, he had the other 3. And now I no longer have any more keys, right? My husband has locked me out of all bank accounts, right? And after that, he told me I had to go raise money and not raid the family anymore. Right? So I had to learn how to raise money. And this is 8 years ago, everyone was looking at patterns of young, right? Everyone's looking for people out at Stanford, male, young.
100%.
So I didn't fit any profile.
Yeah. But, incredible businesses have honestly been created by much older founders, which are still going on today. For example, I'm taking like Starbucks and KFC. They're all, much, much older founders. So, it's absolutely amazing that, that there it isn't always just the young founders, that there is space for older founders. And I think more should be done to looking to individuals who have some incredible ideas in their careers and want to take it forward. And Leesa, on the other end, because you now sit in, the other side, what do you look for when you are choosing an idea to invest in?
Yeah, it's a great question. We really have a formula of the things that we look for, but it starts with the founders. And so with the founders, we use people analytics tools to be inclusive so that we really don't even know the founder, if they're male or female, until the third way into the process. And then once we're in, we're not just evaluating a single founder or 2 founders, we're actually evaluating the whole team. And what we're really looking for here are those that have the intrinsic motivators that are going to be able to exit a company between 6 million and 1.2 billion. And it turns out there is a secret formula for what they are, and it's based on a 20-year longitudinal study. And so, in fact, the characteristics that a founder has who's going to exit a company between 3 to 5 years later are very different to those that are building a long-term company to sell and maybe even to hand over to the next generation. So it was really interesting for me because I've always thought of myself as the 0 to hero kind of 3 to 5 years person. And I'm the person that fires themselves, right? When the company's hit that stage where it's truly scaling, and now you need all that process and re-engineering, that's when I get out of there. I'm the builder, I'm not the process person. And it turns out actually that it's not true that you're only either one or the other. It turns out that you can be motivated to be the other. Women who knew actually have a gender trait that we're quite high on structure. We like to be organized. And that's probably because we're always juggling so many things, right? The average woman has 12 minutes to herself in a day. So no surprise. And it turns out that men are actually very high on detail. And what that means is that if you are too high on detail at the early stages, you're actually going to be too slow. And so we need people at the beginning who are high on money, who are high on initiation, of course, and who in fact are high on strategy, the breadth, because they've got to come up with a plan and be able to lead people into the future. And of course, people who are building those long-term sustainable businesses, they need to be high on process, high on structure, for example. So there's 5 unique characteristics for either of them. And I'll send the link in this chat so people can go off and discover which of those that they are. That's the first part. It's really about people, because at the end of the day, it's like getting married, right? You're going to be with this founder for the next at least 5 years, ideally 10, right? Depending on when you come in the fund. And so the next part we're really looking at is the problem that they're solving. And we need to make sure that that's a big enough problem to affect a large enough audience that it's actually going to deliver a reasonable growth rate and return. And here, I'm an impact investor. So I'm not only looking at the financial return, I'm actually having a look at the specific product, environmental, and social impact that relates to that company. And I need to make sure that when we think about the problem, that it's oxygen, it's aspirin, and it's jewelry. So can I pull apart Rosaline's company? I think that Rosaline's company is oxygen, because if you don't put that healthcare spend into a wallet and allow me to personalize it, I'm actually not going to take good care of my health, right? Because I probably don't have the services that I need to not only treat the current health of my family, but to be preventative and even predictive. The second thing is CXA Group, what I call aspirin, because they are deeply connected to the healthcare ecosystem, and I'm able to curate very efficiently and very easily the services that I need for my young family. And it is also jewelry. And what do I mean by that is I kind of have bragging rights about being a CXA customer, if I am one, because I'm probably the only person on the planet that is able to personalize the insurance for my family, to be preventative in my healthcare approaches, to be predictive in my healthcare approaches, and also to donate the money that I don't spend to the charities or causes that I want. So the best solutions, oxygen, their aspirin, and ideally all three, their oxygen, aspirin, and jewelry. And then the third thing we look for is the why. Why is actually Rosaline going to get out of bed every morning and do this, even on the darkest of days, right? When she doesn't think she can. And she just told you why, right? She'd been trying to do this for 5 years. They weren't doing it. And so she felt so strongly about being able to get predictive around cancer that she went ahead and did it anyway. And so we're really looking for the why. And the last part is I need to make sure you've got IP that is defensible. And so what is it either about the business model or about the technology itself that is defensible? And in this current immobile environment, it's very likely I'm checking out your advisory board, because I want to know who I know, because I can't get on a plane and come and see you. So I need to reduce the risk. And they're the things that we look for when we're evaluating a founder. And of course, ideally traction, but when I meet founders, they generally don't have so much traction because they're inventing in a laboratory or just taking it out of the lab.
Yeah, no, I also love the way that you took the spin around oxygen, aspirin, and jewelry. I think that's an incredible way to think about it. And those 5 points, I think, is definitely something which everyone listening here today should definitely consider when going and pitching your ideas ahead. So, no, great advice, Leesa. Thank you so much. And I kind of want to take a different spin on this right now in terms of, for those listening, and essentially what skills, when you look back in your careers and everything that you've learned, you wish you place more emphasis on to help you flourish?
That's a great question. Is that for me?
It's for both of you. I think these are incredible learnings that those listening can probably start working on now, and so sometimes small qualities which are overlooked, which they may potentially need to develop as well.
Yeah, I think the older you get, and probably Rosaline, you'll appreciate this, the older we get, the more we realize what we don't know, right? We're deeply consciously incompetent. When I was 20 and IPOing companies, I was 10 foot tall and bulletproof, right? But the older I get, I just think I'm a lot more reflective. I think the one thing I would take out of my early career, nursing people in the last days of their lives, is we focus so much on the commercial return early in our career. We focus so much on that job title. At the end of our lives, none of that actually matters. What matters is that we spent quality time with the people that we love, that we had deep, fulfilling relationships with those people. And we can look back at the end of our lives and know that we spent time with them well. Nobody ever looked back at the end of their life and said, I needed more money, or I wish I did that deal. It's just, unfortunately or fortunately, it's not the case. But we kind of have the model all wrong, right? We spend all our time at work, and I'm not encouraging you not to do that if that's your passion, but we spend so little time with the people that we love, with this feeling that we've got to constantly do more and more. And I look around me now, and people that I love are divorcing their loved ones because they just weren't there. When you've been on a plane and away from your family for 26 years, how can you expect at the end of your career to be able to relax and enjoy your family if they've never really spent any time with you? And I think COVID has been a huge awakening for so many people because, you know, many couples actually didn't live together because they traveled 50%, 60, 80% of the year, right? And all of a sudden they're living in the same home. And it's been a real awakening for so many people. Hopefully some of them fell back in love because, you know, now you've got the opportunity to do so, but so many have not. And so I would say the one learning has been simply around fostering and valuing the things that deeply matter. And that's really just the relationships we have with one another.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. Rosaline, how about you?
I spent my career either building out brand new businesses from scratch, or when I worked in big companies, fixing really stagnant businesses and getting them to hyper growth. So my job was always transformation. And the part that I wish I spent more time with is just like what Leesa was saying. It's the people aspects. Because what you find in business is all about, you know, how all your relationships, your investors, your stakeholders, your clients, your employees, your providers. So if I had better skills, I probably would have done better, right? If I could read people better, if I confronted issues earlier instead of letting things fester, if I was a better leader earlier, right, it would have been better. So I think it's always the people aspects. And so what I would recommend for any young person starting their careers is if you can get into leadership earlier, do it, right? Because that's when you really learn the most about yourself and others. And if you can inspire others to go on this journey with you, right, on this mission to build the impossible, right? It's the best experience in the world. So I would encourage young people to do the people things earlier, right? Because that to me is the biggest stretch and the biggest challenge.
Yeah, I was just about to say that I've been doing a little bit more leadership roles now, and I've totally found that jump from doing the work to, you know, being a leader and trying to create this environment where you're inspiring others and, you know, supporting others. It's a big jump, and I definitely agree with that, Rosaline, in terms of, you know, if you listening right now, if you have the opportunity to put yourself in some more leadership roles, make sure you do, because it's honestly, I think for all of us three, one of the biggest ways that you'd learn the most. And Leesa, we've got a question for you, which just touches upon what you said in terms of, you know, focusing on family. We've got a question: how do you balance work that you love with your family and all the downtime with around all 12 minutes of it?
Yeah, it's a great question. I have to say, I just did a 40-hour shift 24 hours ago. So I'm not sure I'm the right person to answer this, but I've got two beautiful kids under the age of 6, a 4-year-old and a 6-year-old. I was the woman that was never getting married, never having kids, right? Because I was a woman on a mission always. And I don't know, you never know. You never know who you're going to fall in love with, and then you just do. And we were double income, no kids, running the world for a large period of time. And I think it was 10 years on, you know, we always planned to have kids. We never really intentionally went about it, if you know what I mean. Just suddenly on the last day of my executive MBA for graduation, I wasn't able to drink my cup of coffee one morning and realized I was having a baby. And we were so delighted. I was 39 years old. I had my little boy when I was 42 years old. Look, I just think that you do the best that you can do, right? I make sure that I am there in the morning when they go to school. I make sure that I work from home, so it's pretty easy to do most of these things at the moment. I make sure that I'm there at lunchtime when they come home for lunch. And I make sure that I'm there when they walk in the door, because those precious minutes to share their day are really, really valuable. And I'm the one that puts them to bed. And, you know, if you carve that out into slots in your diary, it's probably about 1 hour of the day that really matters the most. And my days go literally from 4 a.m. until sometimes 2 the following morning. So it's just so important, and I don't compromise on those times. I've got a wonderful, supportive husband. I think the person you choose in life matters a lot. And we're on this journey together, and he just quit his job to follow me for a change. I quit my job to follow him the last time.
Yeah.
But quitting jobs it's usually just me, building another entity, right? But I just think that finding balance is something that you always have to work out. It's not something that comes easily when you're on a mission, because I actually don't feel like I have a job, right? I just love what I do, and I would do this anyway. So yeah, I think finding your passion and really then balancing everything around your passion is the true joy in life.
Balance is different to every single person, right? What balance is to me is very different to what balance is for you. And just for those listening, if you do have any questions, feel free to send them in. We will be answering all your questions as we continue through this conversation. And now I want to flip it to being a woman in this industry. And I think this is something which I feel all three of us are incredibly passionate about, right? So I would love to hear some of the challenges that you've faced being a woman in venture capital or starting your own business. Would absolutely love to hear that. So Rosaline, over to you.
Yeah, so Leesa's heard me say this before. When I first pitched, and I hadn't pitched before, one of the VCs from Kaufman came up to me and told me I had to learn to pitch like a man because I wasn't. And he said the reason why was because the women in his portfolio did really, really well, better than the men. But when they pitch, he usually had to multiply with the women's estimates of their business by 10, whereas he divided the men's estimates by 10, because he says that women usually underestimate themselves. And so he sent me away to learn to pitch better. And now I pitch like a man, right? So I don't underestimate myself. And I'm on so many conferences and panels, especially in InsurTech, with just men. There are no other women, right? So it's just men and me. So I just want to make sure I represent the women well and be just as good as the men or better.
Yeah. And do you sometimes face, and talking about representing women, being the only woman in that space, do you feel almost this pressure of, what if you slip up and make a mistake that puts, the whole, you're representing women at that point, right? And do you ever feel that pressure that you have to not slip up and you've got to always, be on point? How do you deal with that?
Yeah, I do feel that pressure. So I think I am much more prepared than these men. I'm not BSing out there.
Right? It's something which women do. We definitely prepare much better than
I'm just over prepared, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's what we do. Just to make sure that we don't fail, right? Because we have to succeed.
Yeah, no, completely agree. And how about you, Leesa? What challenges have you faced being a woman, in the venture capital world and starting your own business? And how did you overcome it?
Yeah, I think it's really interesting, right? First of all, everybody tells you can't be a single founder. And I'm sure, Rosaline, you heard that 1,000 times. And it was funny because for the first time I was with my lawyer last week, and I said to him, I've got so much pressure on me, right, that I shouldn't be a sole founder because there's this key man risk. Do you like it? It's not even key woman risk, it's key man risk. And I said, but really, I've got this amazing team of 20 people. Where's the man risk here? Because actually, I'm totally diversified. And he said, actually, don't be worried about that, because I spend my whole time unraveling co-GPs that have fallen apart. And so actually, I would be more inclined to invest in a sole GP than I would a co-founded GP. And that was a real enlightening moment for me, because there's always so much pressure to put on you that you can't possibly do this yourself. And clearly that's not correct, because by the end of this year, we'll be 10 million assets under management. We're traveling at this moment at 85% net IRR. And I'll probably be triple digit by the end of this year after the next round. So it's clearly not true, right? Yeah. And it's not true because we are willing to put in the guts and the effort in order for us to be a high performing team. And what's really fascinating is women across the planet today they represent the management of only 1% of the world's capital. And I was at this wonderful conference a few weeks back. It was called Women in Finance, 100 Women in Finance. And I had the opportunity to hear from allocators all over the world about how they wanted to change that number, that they wanted to invest more money in female emerging managers. And I kind of put it out there as we were going through the conference sessions to say, you know, if your minimum is 100 million allocation and the average first-time fund for a woman is 10 million, how does that work? How are you going to allocate to us? Even if you want to, structurally, it just doesn't work. And it turns out that I think it's not going to be very efficient, right? Because when you've got billions of dollars under management, carving out $10 million checks is not really achievable. So we really have to take it into our own hands, as we always do, and be the change that we want to see. So we're starting a new initiative. It's 25 for 25. And what that means is that in every country, we're going to arm a woman to find 25 champions to launch 25 new emerging managers. And we're going to do this. Our mission is to find 100 countries that will do this by 2025. Wow. We have to make it exponential, and we can't do it alone. And I genuinely believe that if you can imagine, every single woman is going to manage between $10 and $25 million. There's going to be 25 new ones in 100 countries every year for the next 5 years. Just imagine the exponential change in management of capital. So just like getting more female founders money, which is our mission as well as a Beyond Billion signatory, it took us no time at all to together as an industry rally $2 billion for female founders. Yet, you know, generally speaking, women have got 2% of the capital. Yeah. If more women are managers of capital, more women will be funded. We genuinely believe that. And so our mission is to really make that happen.
Yeah, incredible mission, by the way, really, really inspiring. And you touched upon, 1 to 2% of women, being, having capital. And like, I'm very curious to hear your view on what you think is holding women back from, more women being in the space.
Yeah, it's a great question. I recently took on partnership in She Loves Tech Korea in Japan, because do you know there is less than 50 female founders in Korea and Japan that are Series A and below? And in fact, when I moved to Luxembourg, there's only 35 of us. How is that possible, right? There's just so many women on the planet. And it's because of a number of things. Generally speaking, if we think about women out there ruling their own destiny, not every economy culturally embodies that, as we know, right? We've got quite a way to go before women are given the opportunities. And especially when you have family and you have children, right? There are certain things that are expected in some industries that if you've got a family and you've got to put that child to bed at 7 o'clock at night, you're not actually even going to be home to put that child to bed, right? And so it automatically excludes women from the equation. And so I think COVID has done some remarkably negative things to the, women being participative, because as you know, in many countries in the world, there's not available help and support. But I do believe, in Singapore, on average, we would have traveled 50 to 80% of the year. I couldn't imagine a life where I'm spending 80% of the year away from my family. And so I think women taking charge, putting it into their own hands, gives us an opportunity to change the paradigm. And why are women excluded from 98% of the capital? I think it's because we don't network well enough. Men genuinely network their way to money, and women, typically, we just don't have the same quality or diversity of networks. And so we really have to get more involved from a networking perspective in order to build it, so that when men go out in order to extend capital, that we're actually in the lens as opposed to not in it at all. And I think the final thing is generally speaking, as women, we make sure that we're 100% cooked before we put ourselves out there. The average bloke does that when he's 30% cooked. And then we go crazy because that guy went running 30% cooked, right? And he got the opportunity. And so I think we really do just have to take a go at it, right? No one expects in startups for it to be perfect. That's the beauty of startups. So yeah, I think it's really backing ourselves, making sure that we're willing to put ourselves out there and work it out along the way, as opposed to having it all worked out when we go out the gate.
100%. And I think, you touched upon this, that, we as women, we want it to be perfect. We're quite perfectionist, I think.
Yes.
And then we go and we, get in touch with other individuals. But it's all about shouting about your achievements and claiming it, to be honest.
Yes.
Whilst we bring others on the journey with us, so that they also do feel part of that journey, right? So no, completely agree. And Rosaline, also very keen to hear in terms of your thoughts on how do we make more women move into starting their own startups and taking that risk to do so, and actually not just being attracted to do it, but being making a conscious choice, being hey, I'm going to do this and I'm going to be a boss woman. I'm going to thrive in it.
So part of my team, when I sold off my brokerage, actually just started their own businesses.
Yeah.
And I was so proud of them. And I think the reason they were willing to was because when they were part of the startup, they had control over different countries. So I actually think as startup founders, we need to breed alumni that can start their own firms, give them the tools and the experience so that they have the confidence to do it on their own. So, and it took so long to even lure them into the startup. But, once we sold them to, an owner that, they didn't like, they decided they were going to be leaders on their own. And so we have quite a few alumni now. So I would like to breed more women. It's kind of like PayPal. PayPal breeded a lot of leaders, right? Startup founders. Can we breed? Can we grow our own, right? And
I
give
love
them
that
more
concept.
experience.
Yeah, absolutely love that concept, that whole domino effect, and transferring your skills to others to prep them and give them the tool to share as well. Absolutely love that concept. And we do have a question that's come in terms of management. So this individual has just taken on their first management role at a seed startup at the age of 23, which is incredible, and would love to know great ways or your best ways to inspire your team to fulfill their own goals.
Yeah, I guess.
So
go ahead.
Please go ahead, Leesa.
No, you're on fire. I love listening to you. Please.
Yeah. So I when I build startups, or even when I ran divisions in big companies, I always try to find out their goals, and line them up with my vision, right? And is there a way to fulfill both? So I actually like moving people around to many different roles. And in CXA, I actually had 75 people who used to work for me before in my last 3 companies. So 75, but a lot of them only came after we were value at 100 million because it was safer. So asking people what their goals are and seeing if there's a way you can line it up with your own firm, because you're on this journey, right? And in this journey, it's not a sprint. It's kind of you're kind of sprinting this marathon. And if you can help people reach their goals in your startup, right? But you would only know if you ask them. So the first thing you really got to know your team and figure out what makes them tick, right? Where's the right place to place them, and can you help them reach their goals in their jobs in your company, right? So a lot of people, I moved many, many, many different roles so that they're able to start their own, because they become good generalists, and they also get to lead.
Yeah. And I think that's a very, very important characteristic of being a good leader, is being able to support and develop the talent around you, right? And Leesa, very keen to hear your views on what you think are some of the best ways to inspire your team.
Yeah, well, I guess Rosaline took the words right out of my mouth. That's exactly what we're doing at R3I. When I recruited our team, I literally went back over the last 20 years of my career to think about all the people that I loved working with that had made a difference to the lives of founders. And now we've built an incredible team across the planet. And R3I is their platform as much as it is mine. right? We're all on a mission. We have very shared goals about what it is we want to achieve, and we're doing it together. Now, some of those guys are focused on supporting and enabling their families. Some of them are in the legacy stage of their careers. I've got two of my team who are 70 plus years of age. So we really cross generations, gender, and culture in R3I. And we've actually built the whole vision together as to how we're going to move this company across borders. So yeah, I think going back to what Rosaline said, it's making your platform their platform, making sure that you are aligned on purpose. Remember, we're an impact fund before we are a venture capital fund. We're here to deliver returns. Let's make no mark about that. But we are most importantly an impact fund. And if you're not here for purpose, you're not in the right firm. So I think that's really been a part of getting everybody on the journey, is really aligning on that purpose.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And I think, when even looking for your own company to work in or a job to work in, having a shared sense of purpose or shared sense of values is incredibly important. Even when you're looking to hire individuals, finding people with the same values, I think, is incredibly important, and it's the foundation of making great teams. So thank you. I think we're nearly up to the time. I don't know how quickly this conversation has just flown by, but it'd be great just to share if there's any way for individuals to get in touch with you. What's the best way for them to contact you?
So for me, I run a remarkable session every Friday afternoon here in Luxembourg from 3 to 5 p.m. So just find me on Calendly with my last name and book in for one of our sessions. You can find us there.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Leesa. And Rosaline, how about you?
I'm easy to find. You can find me on LinkedIn, and I believe in helping new founders.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. It's been a thrilling conversation and lovely to have both of you.
And Kajol, where can people find you and connect with you?
You can find me on YouTube at Kajol Fitness on YouTube, or also on my Instagram at Kajol Fitness there. That'd be great. Thank you so much for listening to all of us here today.